Artificial intelligence is reinventing business as we speak. You can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Cognitive Path founders Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they chat with AI experts about the latest ideas, trends, and technologies that are creating the future of business today. This is No Brainer.
Hey everybody, this is Geoff Livingston. I'm here with Kiki L'Italien. Before we dive into our conversations, let me do our commercials really quick. The No Brainer podcast is returning to you every 2 weeks. We're thrilled to have you. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, all those things that make our podcast a little more exciting on the algorithm. And we all know that the AI algorithm owns everything today. So please help us. And we do take feedback. You can always email us, go to nobrainerpodcast.com or reach out to either Greg Verdino or myself individually. Speaking of which, Greg is engaged in an association meeting today with one of our clients. And I think it's actually really fitting in a way because we have Kiki L'Italien, my old friend from the old podcasting and social media days. And here we are all these days later, and we're still doing it. And obviously Kiki's known for Association Chat, which was her organization that she uses still, but used to help so many organizations. And she was acquired and now is working in what's the name of the conglomerate? Is it Churn?
So it's Core Adventures, and they own companies like Big Red M, which I also work for now.
Right.
And then, they acquired Association Chat in 2024. That's been going really well. It's been growing. We've got a magazine.
I know. It's awesome. Yeah, I get it. It's cool. Really cool.
So good stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So first of all, before we get into it, how's that going? I feel like Association Chat has scaled and is reaching a lot more people. You're a lot more visible. You just won a big award with the ASAE for your contributions to the sector. It seems like all things L'Italien are on fire right now. What's happening with you?
It feels like it. It's really exciting because that Association Chat's been sort of my baby, my pride and joy and passion project. That was sort of, it couldn't really grow without more resources for 15 years. And now it has a chance to grow. It has resources behind it. There are a couple people who are dedicated to working on it now. And so, it's starting to grow. And as a result, I think I'm starting to grow more too, because I'm able to develop things I always wanted to do with it, while also at the same time continuing to do some consulting and, of course, act as EVP of marketing and community engagement for Big Red M. And so it's been exciting, and it's really led to a lot of growth, not just for Association Chat, but also for me personally. So it's been good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So well deserved.
Oh, thank you. And it's you knew when I was looking at making a shift. We had a discussion at that point. So I feel like I remember exactly where we were standing, where I was saying, something's got to give. This isn't working for me. And so here we are.
Yeah. And I bet that when that opportunity popped, you were just kind of like, okay, let's see where it goes. And it's really amazing how those things happen, right?
It was such an honest discussion that I had, just the most freakishly honest, probably overly honest discussion. And it actually came from, it's actually a great testament to when somebody asks you what you really want, sometimes it's good to have a good idea, a clear idea about what it is and not being afraid to ask for it, because I got it. And it was not, I didn't think so. I didn't think it would be, when somebody says, wave the magic wand and what would your dream job be? You wouldn't be like, well, I'd have financial support for this passion project I have. I'd be able to do this. I'd be able to do that. And then somebody make it happen, right? When does that happen? But that's the way it works. So sometimes freakish honesty can take you in some good places.
That's great. I'm still waiting for somebody to make me their CTO, though.
Yes, I don't know. You're pretty honest. You're pretty honest. So like, it's just any day now.
To a fault. For some people, that's a strength. For other people, it might be a weakness. Okay. Let's get into what people want to hear. So obviously you have so much domain expertise with associations and cognitive path. That's our primary vertical. So we're both dealing with associations quite a bit. We also deal with companies too, just for the record. But obviously I have my impressions of association adoption, having worked with several of them on this particular topic. But what are you seeing from your position, not just as the VP of Big Red M, but also from,
Yeah.
kind of like that industry luminary standpoint?
Yeah, I would say that until the beginning of 2025, I think everything, there were a lot of minds and there was a lot of attention focused on AI adoption and trying to figure out where the attention should be first. And there was a lot of concern about security. And I'm talking about this like in past tense, because as with many things, I think that with the new administration coming in on Capitol Hill, attention for things like AI, tech advancement, stuff like that, it has been so refocused into the direction of what is going to happen with tariffs or what's going to happen with
The tax law. Yeah.
legislations, tax law. What I'm seeing is not just in my position, but also in my position with Big Red M, so much attention, focus, and of resources and of just mind share going directly to what's happening on Capitol Hill and not as much on what kind of advancement needs to happen with using AI technology and especially beyond even generative AI stuff. So
Yeah.
it's like I really do see a redirection of focus for good or for ill.
Yeah. It's interesting. Certainly, we've actually experienced that with a couple of clients, 3 clients this year, actually. I could specifically remember the conversations where we're working on something and all of a sudden all the balls have to drop because they're addressing something that happened out of the White House or
Yeah.
something that's going on in Congress. And it's a huge issue for associations because not only are they serving their members, but they're also their members' advocates.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of challenges that are going on, particularly for those trade associations, the ones that are representing industries. I mean, really, really crazy stuff right now.
Absolutely. And we work a lot with the trade and trade associations. And so we're seeing that happen where the government affairs focus is where everything is right now. And it's kind of difficult to get those association leaders to focus on anything else. And then we're also seeing it when you look at the professional societies, especially if they're in the sciences and
Oh,
academia,
yeah. They have to. Oh, yeah. The
and
teachers union, was it
sure.
NEA? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so does that mean that progress in AI and the way that things are changing and shifting, that's not happening? No, but it just means that a lot of those association leaders are not looking at that right now. And they probably should be,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. I mean, you were at MMC Tech, so was I.
Yeah.
For folks that don't know, that's an ASAE conference in the DC area. Focuses, I would say it's more marketing centric, although it's supposed to bridge both marketing and tech.
Yeah.
And I think it's my impression of the conference is the attendee tends to be the director level. Maybe it's VP of marketing, but they're also managers. It's kind of in between the two. And everybody was talking AI. There was a session every moment on AI. It seemed like I had a session on AI agents. And my general conversations with people was that they were really getting, I would say beyond that, we're playing with this and more like, how do I make this work for me phase, but not necessarily beyond that individual department point of view, and definitely not on an association-wide standpoint. That was just my impression. What was your take on that conference and how people were discussing this?
Oh, same. I think people are getting tired. There's definitely the interest in, how can we like get some cool little prompt or something to like, create some marketing or whatever. But that's I think most people are bored with that at this point, and they're like, okay, can we move on beyond that? And what can we actually do now that more minds have gotten to the point where, okay, I get this, but I also understand I'm hearing about things like agentic AI. What does that mean? And how do we apply that to our organizations? And yeah.
I got trolled my
Did you?
whole session. I was getting trolled the whole session. It was incredible.
Really?
Yeah, I
Really?
had two like IT guys in the front row just like throwing balls at me the whole time. It was pretty funny.
Oh my God. I wish I would. I mean, not that that's good, but that would have been entertaining kind of to watch.
Oh, it was definitely
Were you like, just like
I
fighting it back? How did
I
that go?
well, IT has an interesting role with AI. And I think with associations, and this is all by way of prefacing how this conversation went down or this side conversation that was happening in front of everybody, which was really,
Weird.
really
Interesting.
weird and painful. And to the point where people were coming up to me afterwards and being like, wow, you really handled that really well. It's just like, they're like, those guys needed a nap. I'm like, I need a nap.
Oh my gosh. Oh
But
my
I
gosh.
know you would be proud of me though, because you've known me all these years. I was so much more even keeled than I would have been 15 years ago.
Yeah,
But long story short, I think because of association IT tends to be a little bit more conservative and
for sure.
functional, often is managed by the CFO or the COO.
Hmm.
And as a result, they tend not to be very progressive in the way that they think. And they also tend to be very defensive. One of the guys was a data analyst, and he was talking about, well, what are you going to do about to protect intellectual property and data? And
Oh,
how are you going to get into data governance? And I said, I often start with cybersecurity.
yeah.
And I think if you have a good cybersecurity program, you probably have a good data governance program. And he goes, that's not true.
Oh,
Data governance is not the same as cybersecurity. And technically, Kiki, yes and no. Yes, you could say that they're separate entities, but the reality is if you have a data governance program and you don't have cybersecurity, you have basically a piece of paper somewhere on a SharePoint drive that's not being followed. You
yeah.
have to have cybersecurity controls to implement data governance.
What was your focus for the session? What was the promise to people? Like, why
It
did
was
why
on
did this happen?
AI agents and how they can be beneficial long term, but also
Yeah,
realistically speaking, we're not there yet with the technology. And I was very
yeah,
clear about that with really complex tests, only at best 30% success rates right now. So
yeah,
that's not prime time, right?
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so like that was the focus, but these guys they were
Wanting
just
to
like
take it somewhere else.
any little thing that they didn't like, they were throwing something at. And it was a very Socratic conversation.
Oh, well, fun. That's not fun at all. I'm so sorry that you
I actually found it to be very association like though. Like this is the kind of like
It is.
internal warfare that occurs in
Yeah.
associations with politics and maintaining control over things. And
I
I
think
do see that cultural kind of barrier come into play there,
it's a really good point because I do think that it's no secret that associations tend to play very conservative, not politically conservative, but as far as like is all about being risk averse and not wanting to take a whole lot of chances and to the point where it can slow progress down and make it so that historically associations have had a hard time keeping up with things with in technology and in a lot of cases with society and the changes that are happening around. So it's with technology in particular changing so quickly, it's been a problem. And I do think that also that's sort of a common defense mechanism too, is to just begin to sort of shoot down all of this stuff that all of these potential like this could be potentially problematic. I might have to develop something over here. That seems both time consuming, difficult, and beyond what I want to work on. And so like I'm just going to shove a bunch of arguments over in this direction. And maybe that's not just associations, maybe that's people. I don't know, but it does seem to be in a lot of associations. I see that.
Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
did want to follow up on one of your remarks, which I thought was interesting. which was when you were talking about people are kind of frustrated with just like, okay, what's a prompt and more,
Yeah.
how's this actually going to work for me? Do you
Yeah.
find that people really are seeing meaningful use cases where they can apply an LLM or they can apply Tableau analytics into their generative AI tools? Because we're seeing more and more complex models, right?
Right.
And that combination of having some sort of analytics fueling generative, really powerful. Are people getting there yet?
Starting to, but I still think that there's a huge lag. I think that in general, most of the people, at least from my experience that I come across, have done some kind of something where they've interacted with LLMs at least. And for those who have, there's like another portion that's become like a daily thing, the way that they use it. However, I would say that it still has a long way to go as far as how are people using all of the integrations, built-in tools even that are accessible to them. I'm finding that a lot of people they still haven't realized as much all of the things that you can do with a lot of the tools that are widely available to us. And so sure, people get busy and they don't have, they're like not making the most, they're not keeping up with all of the changes that are happening with some of these things. And to be fair, they're changing fast and there's
I
new
mean, it's
stuff all
crazy,
the
right?
time.
Every
Yeah,
week.
it's insane. But there's just so much that you can do with them now, including like your prompts. They're just they're kind of helping, like, they're helping the dumbest of us figure out like, how to do what we wanna do, even without people figuring out how to work their minds, their brains the right way to, like, get the outcomes that they want. And so, I think that a lot of people could be doing things a lot better than they are still, but, also technology is progressing to the point that it's making up for, like, just a huge amount of errors that for folks, and so that's scary, but yeah, more people are playing with it, more people are using it, more people are learning how to use these things effectively, but sadly, I think that there's still a long way to go with all of it. And I would say that I think minimal level of like, let's jump over this hurdle, like we should all get to this minimal level of understanding. We still haven't gotten to that minimal level yet. You know?
No, I would agree with you. Adoption
Yeah.
is really quite different in different organizations. And I've heard that, oh, it's really a young person thing. And I don't see that actually with some young
No.
people are really fighting this off too.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really
How is
interesting.
that? Why is that? I
I,
don't
I,
understand that.
I think that's a good segue into our next conversation, which is that whole blow up that happened. I forget what Anthropic CEO's name is.
I
He's
don't
he's
know.
no Sam Altman, I'll tell you that. But
Yeah.
but
No opening eyes. It's just like, wait, Anthropic, sorry. I don't
he
know.
hasn't said enough dramatic statements yet. That's why.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. Well, it seemed like that was kind of part of the ball game with that one. But went on to CNN and had a comment or three about how the knowledge worker is going to be replaced, how 50% of entry level jobs are going to be gone, and 20% of all knowledge working jobs are going to be gone because of AI in the next 3 to 5
Yeah.
years. And it was a very dramatic statement. And of course, it was laced with coulds, might, that kind of thing. And it was very reminiscent of when Sam Altman 18 months ago said that 90% of marketers would lose their creatives would lose their jobs, which we haven't
Yeah.
seen.
Right.
Although we have seen some slowdown in hiring in that space.
Sure. As people think that's where things are headed and then discover how crappy AI generated, just like throwing it out there, how bad that marketing can really be.
So
But
So before we dive deep into it,
yeah.
let's play with this a little bit. Let's take the statement on a macro level because I think it inspires a lot of the fear and resistance, right? Are
Uh-huh.
you buying or selling this?
I actually think that we have a long way to go. I mean, of course, everybody was talking about it. Dramatic statement, lots of created a lot of uproar and a lot of articles written about it, and it came up in many, many meetings, where it's like,
Yes.
well, now we're all it's not just entry level anymore. Now it's management. And I'm like, I don't see it. I really don't see it because there's just so much that there are so many like elements that AI doesn't cover, like that none of this really covers right now. That I'm like, good luck. I mean, I'm curious to see how that's going to work. I haven't seen it happen yet. I do think that it sparked a conversation, though, of something that I think is much more concerning and much more maybe interesting at this point to talk about, and that is the role of IP, our intellectual property. And for those of us that if you're dealing in your knowledge worker and you're dealing and protecting your IP and you're like looking at how important your data is too, what does that look like in the world that we live in now? And what is that going to look like? And it's this a lot of it comes back to education and the way that we're using these tools and the way that we're just adding a lot of the unique pieces of content and creative thinking into our large language models that are just like, we're just like feeding it and
Yeah.
then giving that away. And when it pops out on the other end for somebody else, what
It's
are you going to do?
ChatGPT's idea or Claude's idea, right?
Exactly. And I was in an interesting discussion with someone who said that for writers, for anybody that deals in IP, for coaches that are out there, when you are thinking that you're holding on to these ideas and that they're just going to be uniquely yours forever, watch out because that whole system is going to be shaken up. And that, I think, is much more present and in front of us than this idea of like, oh, bye mid-management, bye, bye C-suite.
Well, it just to reaffirm that latter point, obviously I'm selling too, and I think you can
Yeah,
probably tell that by the way I was talking about his comments. I think it's bullshit, and they're just, look, if your technology is quote unquote powerful enough to cause a lot of people to lay off, it certainly could do a lot of cool things too. And it
yeah.
makes it seem much more powerful, much more capable, and deserving of investment.
Mhm.
And I think that people forget that these AI companies, a lot of them are very profitable. And then a lot of their revenue actually comes from investors who
Mhm.
are fueling their development of the technology. Now, some of them are making more money. AI is starting to make good revenue. And Anthropic is a good B2B player. But still, they are venture-funded companies. And as such, they are dependent on building valuation. And that's return on investment for their existing portfolio of investors. So there's a lot more behind that. And on top of that, Anthropic's behind in mindshare. I would say that they're very well placed on the B2B side, but behind on the larger mindshare. They're in that second tier, Google, Gemini,
Yeah.
Perplexity. And as such, they have a lot of room to catch up to with OpenAI if they want to really
Yeah.
challenge them.
Oh,
And this is the
sure.
only way to do it. The only time, other times that they get any kind of traction is when they release a new model.
I mean, I think that's what that was really just like, pay attention to us, pay attention to us. Oh, maybe I should be using this, you know? And so, yeah.
Yeah. Second interesting piece of news, which nobody is talking about, which reaffirms our thinking, by the way. So this is all about our confirmation bias.
Yeah, well, like,
Of
we're not going
course,
through that
right?
or what?
Salesforce is getting the daylights beat out of it this week. It's stock
Oh,
price valuation because their agent force adoption is slower than investors would like. And
interesting.
investors are pulling back because they don't think people are adopting agent force well and that it's not replacing people fast enough, which is horrible in its own right. But of course, that's Wall Street and
Yeah.
margins all the way. And it gets back to like Microsoft having to rehire people and IBM having to rehire people after laying people off and all that stuff. The reality is this stuff, we keep seeing people lay folks off and have to bring them back
Ugh,
because the agents aren't working well enough to replace them. And Agent Force in particular, we have your unique lens on from the association standpoint because of the AMSs that are built on them.
yeah.
And I can tell you, because I'm in the middle of an implementation right now, even Salesforce sales engineers don't know what Agentforce can really do. And
Yeah.
they're much
Yeah.
more concerned about selling data cloud and selling other opportunities than they are necessarily Agentforce pure adoption. And that's a huge challenge. Long story short, back to everybody getting replaced. I just don't see it. It's just not happening fast enough. And this stuff is way too immature, way too flawed.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think that they're working on trying to, I think their strategy is on getting even more exposure and getting people there in the association market to talk more about what its capabilities are and knowledgeable people who know more about it. And the reason I say that is because while we were at ASAE's MMC and Tech conference, I heard from somebody that is in the know that said that this year at ASE annual Salesforce, it's like will have its own presence on the expo hall floor, which I hadn't realized. I didn't know. But then when I got to thinking about it, it definitely has had a huge presence in other places like IMEX, the largest trade show for the mice industry, and looking at meetings and stuff like that that happens in Vegas, and just they just had it in Frankfurt not long ago. But I've seen Salesforce with their huge exhibits and stuff there, but not really at ASE annual. And so
Right.
apparently they're showing up in Vegas this year. And I think that's no accident. It's probably related exactly to what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, they have a huge challenge too, I think, with the association space in the sense that their primary entry points are Nimble and Fogtiva.
Yeah.
And both
Yeah.
of those AMSs have been slow to implement Agentforce, and I would say lagging far behind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the other thing too that's a little bit weird about the job loss thing, and you and I were talking about this beforehand, most associations are human resource strapped. Like they just cannot hire enough people to get done everything that they promise their members are going to get done.
Yeah.
So hypothetically speaking, if these agents were working or if AI was easier to adopt and implement and people were able to engage and really get much more productive, I think associations would be thrilled. I think the staff would be thrilled. They'd be much better able to actually achieve what they're supposed to achieve.
Absolutely. I'll tell you that right now, associations, if anything, are more strapped for like needing the people, all hands on deck type of situation more than ever, because they're being asked to do so much and they don't have the tools available to them or the understanding of what tools they should be using that could be available to them to make the most of what they already have. And they're hungry. They're hungry for those solutions. They need them desperately.
Yeah.
I think at this point they've been hearing about customization and personalization and all the ways that they're supposed to be able to more easily reach out and do what they need to do for their membership. And that is mostly just, it's like failing them in so many cases because the tools are at least not either not intuitive enough, or they need more tech savvy and people who are more knowledgeable to use those tools, or they're not interacting or integrating with clunkier technology that they are already wed to or using within their organizations. And that definitely happens. If you had the ability to go in and say, hey, I have this AI tool that is essentially like a car mechanic, and you're driving your clunky AMS into be fixed by this. Let me just have this overhauled here and then give it back to you so that it's going to work the way that you need it to. I think that would be a really great sell because associations need it. They're strapped to have the tools that are really going to help them do more with less.
Yeah, I even hear a lot of them talking about just stripping out the AMS altogether and just going straight to CMS.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's been a popular discussion is like, do we even need one anymore? And so what does that tech stack look like when we just take that out of the equation? And some are very publicly doing that. So yeah.
Good for them. I have no opinion on that, although I do, but I'm not going to get into it. Neither of us needs to have that conversation right now. Oh my gosh. So, what are the real opportunities? I think we just touched on a few right there, but in your mind, what do you think the real opportunities are with this technology right now? I mean, we
I
obviously
mean,
go ahead.
I think at the very lowest, so if we start at the bare minimum, right? I think the opportunities for figuring out how to do more with less, how to upskill employees so that they are able to use some of these things that are available to them and to actually achieve that greater, not just efficiency, but effectiveness using what they have is like the minimum, right? That's an opportunity. And that's a huge portion of what we're talking about. That should be the first thing, like the first level of, I don't know, you have an AI maturity model, I think, but it's like that first
An
level,
immaturity
right?
model.
Immaturity model. And then I would say that the next level of opportunity that every leader should be thinking about is what kind of data are we responsible
Yeah.
for right now? What do we have? And how can we look at our role in our industry or this science or whatever, and the collaborators that exist out there or could exist out there that would allow us to do more with what we have? And my God, there is so much that is available. There are a few organizations, a few leaders that are looking at that and figuring out how to do that, but not nearly enough. But that's a fascinating story. And that I think that's where the real opportunity is, that could do more than just impact an association's business model and be making them become more than relevant, but becoming really important and resonant in whatever industry or field that they're doing and to with their mission. But it's also something that I think could help change the world in a lot of cases. And I wish that we could get there faster.
Yeah, yeah. I think you really touched on something, and it's a thread that keeps popping up, which is the data thing and the intellectual property. And obviously, we've seen it's a real dangerous time, I think, for intellectual property. And I think you raised that in particular in our pre-show huddle. Obviously, these LLMs and these AI companies have a vested interest in getting as much good quality data as they can to upgrade their training and make their knowledgeable responses better. And I think when you look at a lot of the hallucination issues that we've seen and some of these wacky answers you get, and part of that is the use of X and Reddit and other hyperbole
Yeah.
for training data. And I even saw that today on Google where there was some BS I saw on a social network, and now I really question everything. If it seems like too sensational or crazy, I just flat out start looking for it. And the only
Yeah.
thing that the AI was sourcing as its answer source was the same post that I was questioning. And it was
Yeah.
just kind of this big misinformation,
Yeah.
disinformation loop. So
Yeah.
huge quality issues. Associations have intellectual property. They are the purveyors, as you had said, of information within their science or their sector. They own unique data. They have that statistical information. They have that professional know-how, the best practices, in some cases, the quality information you need to get certified, all the different aspects that come with being somebody that is the association of a certain topic.
Hmm.
What what do you think they could do? I mean, if data is gold, right?
Yeah.
How can they sell that or use that for advocacy purposes? What are your thoughts on that?
Mm. Well, I think that there's a lot there. My biggest concern with everything that you just said, my biggest concern is that associations understand. It's always been important. Trust has always been important. But I think right now that associations understand the importance of remaining that trusted purveyor of good data, of good research and
Quality. Yeah.
content and all of the things. That is absolutely critical, because that's been the reason why associations are where journalists turn to get the quote, to access the experts, to get the official story. And there's so many examples that are happening all the time of where media and like they're publishing stories. We all know about the like list of book recommendations that don't exist, books that
Yeah.
don't exist, and all of this stuff is happening. And they're not happening in these tiny blogs or something like that. They're happening in like the New York Times or
Right.
something like
It's
that.
really scary. Plus the whole aggregation of the same story over and over
Sure.
again in different places. And if that's,
Sure. If a lie is told often enough, it becomes the truth, right? It's the official, like this is becomes the official record. And that's so concerning. And my fear is that for associations, the real strength, the gold in their data is that they are collecting real information, real data that's super valuable. And it's like, okay, use it, but use it wisely. Understand that when you are thinking about the ways that you're going to work with your different tools and things like that, understand that this information that you're putting out there, people, if they don't trust you, it doesn't matter what your data. If they
yeah,
don't trust you, if they don't trust what you're doing and what you're like how you're communicating about this stuff, it won't the value won't be there,
yeah,
right? And so it's very, very important to just understand that piece of things. And I think that's really something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, even more as these stories continue to go out.
yeah, 100%. I think it's a great time if you're very good at managing your brand and protecting your information, or at
Yeah.
least making sure it's authentically sourced. And the good news is some of the media has worked with the LLMs to create that way that that's done effectively, but now can associations mirror that?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we're almost out of time. So I'm going to ask
What?
you my last question, which is what do you think the barriers facing associations are?
I think the barriers are like education and understanding, getting the staff, the employees to the point where they understand what is possible and actually begin to ask the questions and yes, take some time to explore what is possible today that wasn't possible yesterday with looking at their data and looking at the opportunities that exist. Because I would say, like a conversation, not selling your services for you or anything like that, but I would say a conversation with someone like you could be very beneficial because
I'll
they
slide you
don't.
that $100 later.
Yeah, yeah, I'll be waiting for it. And but no, I think that just being able to sit down and understand, like, what are we not what are the questions I should be asking about how I'm using my data? What could we be thinking about doing in the near future, in the next to near future, and a little bit further out? And how what are some of the steps to get there? Because I think that it seems so overwhelming for folks that they're like, they're reading these news stories about, oh, okay, so all of mid management is going to be gone. My job's going to be gone, and they just kind of
Yeah,
don't
they're
want to.
bugged out.
They don't want to. They don't want to poke around. They don't want to bring AI in. There's just like it's becoming like this scary thing. I also think that still, and you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, but just it's worth saying again. I still think that people tend to default into thinking about the generative AI LLMs only and not about some of the bigger pieces of machine learning and all of the things that have been around that now have evolved to a point where, that's where the real opportunity and capabilities are that are changing things beyond productivity and moving it to here are products,
Okay.
here are benefits that we can offer, here are insights about you name it that we can now add value to these things that you do. And it's those types of discussions that they need to have.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with the ML side of it. I don't know about you, but I'm constantly trying to make myself eat my own dog food and learn things.
Yeah.
And I'm actually,
No, I just want to eat my own dogs. Yeah. I try. I try.
I'm actually taking an IBM data science class right now so I can better understand Python and how all that works with the data science side. Not because I intend to become a data scientist, far from it, but just so I can be more fluid
How's
in
it
that
going?
conversation and management thing. I mean, it's not very surprising to me, but it's more just seeing how the tactical layers unfold. I made the joke about the CTO thing, but it's a joke, not joke for me. I really do feel like I can manage an entire technology enterprise. But I do think, though, at the same time, for me, this is kind of like the equivalent of Steve Jobs not knowing what's happening on the customer service line. And so him literally sitting down and getting those calls directly. I need to
Yeah.
see what's happening with programming and the data science and how information is chewed up and used and how algorithms are created to find trends and how that fuels generative AI, for example. To me, like it is where it's at. And I think not understanding how even generative AI is a probability mechanism,
Mhm. Mhm.
that's all ML. It's all analytics. What's the right outcome? What's the best chance of an outcome? And
Yeah.
when you think of an association in particular and their member journey,
Yeah.
man, you want to be able to analyze different pieces of that. You want to find the trends in that. Any generative tool, if it's not fueled with those insights, you're just not making good decisions.
Yeah. I do think that there's some missing pieces to like link all of this stuff together, that's happening just across organizations in general, not just associations, but like all the way across because these different areas of understanding that are not syncing. I remember being brought in to consult with a tech company that is in the events space. And and my role was just to work with their technologists about explaining associations and how they work and the different types of relationships that exist there. And things like the concept of chapters and components and the different ways that those can work. And it's just it's like trying to bring all of these different areas of knowledge together so that the technology meet the needs that exist there is something that I think is still in its infancy. I really
Yeah.
don't think that it's where it needs to be, and I think I would argue that that's why a lot of AMSs have the reputations that they do, is because it's like, here it is, you've been offered up as the answer, this big answer for associations, and why does it not meet the needs? Because in a lot of cases, I'm not saying all, but, like, in a lot of cases, what do you hear the association staff complain about? Even if they're really into technology, even if they understand it, they get in there and they say, "You don't understand us. You don't understand the relationships that exist here. And that's why we're not getting the data that we need, or this is not meeting our needs." But you take that and you just carry it forward to any kind of technology that you're using when you're working with associations. And it's like, that's probably the conflict or the barrier you're gonna come into.
Plus also the internal nature of associations, right? Like if I'm the events person, I don't really need to deal with the literature person. The literature
Right,
person can
yeah.
have a booth at the show, okay?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
the standards group or the
Mhm.
market research group. They're very siloed businesses. And now you have to bring all that data and that workflow together in order to make the AI work well. Because the
Yeah.
member doesn't see it that way.
Yeah,
The
the member
member
doesn't.
sees a
Yeah,
holistic picture, right?
yeah,
And so I think it's a huge management challenge for
it is.
association executives.
It certainly is, and I do think that's where they're trying to figure out what is it that's the most important thing that we need to focus on right now. What's the board expecting? What is the industry expecting that we're in? Does this meet our mission? Oftentimes is sort of the last consideration. It's like they're just trying to navigate what's in front of them, like most of us. And I think that can become problematic when you have all of these new things that are supposed to be magical that are possible to them and they don't know where to begin. And there is this, speaking of trust, there's this long line of empty promises that they've dealt with in technology that was sold to them in the past with large price tags that didn't pan out. And
And
nobody wants to have that happen to them.
yeah, 100%. 100%. That's also using technology as a band-aid to fix a problem. right?
Right.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's a huge issue with AI right now, where it's being sold as a panacea, and really it just doesn't work unless you have your business down hard and you understand your processes very well. And
Yeah.
if not, then you're going to have a hard time making this thing work, right? Like if you don't know how you're getting things done, how can an AI automate a task?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, this has been a good conversation. I'm sure we've left people maybe a little more, I guess,
Maybe.
maybe
I
a little
don't
more up
know.
to
Maybe
speed.
not.
I don't know. It's a big topic for sure.
It
Kiki,
is.
you're very popular on LinkedIn. I'll definitely leave that link there, but where can people find you?
They can find me at associationchat.com. And I also started something that is called the trustproject.com that I'm syncing up to my Substack. And Geoff, that's the new like little passion. I have to have some sort of passion project,
Of
right?
course.
And so it's like the trust project is it's like something where I'm just continuing to write about trust and these issues and the things that how I see it, not just in interacting with associations, but there's a lot of that. But it's just the role that it's playing in society today. Because I think that with all of this conversation about can I trust what's happening with my IP? And can I trust what I see on TV? Can I trust it's not even fake news, although it is now. It's like, can I trust this article from the New York Times?
Yeah.
Uh,
It's a
a
massive
lot,
issue right now.
yeah. Can I trust, the people that are coming up to ask me a question on the street? Can I, I don't know. There's a lot of questions about trust right now. And I just find it fascinating because that is a topic I was already interested in. And I'm watching how that tearing apart at all kinds of communities and it tearing apart at all kinds of groups. And I think if we understand it better, then maybe it helps bring us closer together as people. So anyway,
I love it.
that's the thing. That's the new thing.
Very cool. Well, you heard about the trust
Project,
project, not the protocol.
trustproject.com. Yeah.
Such a nerd. I'm like, it's a trust
The
protocol.
trust protocol. It's the trust framework. Yeah, I know.
uh, so you've heard about it. We're going to put it in the links. We're going to put Association Chat in the links and obviously Kiki's LinkedIn profile. Uh, People, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please punch that like button, leave a comment, share it, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with another podcast. Thank you, Kiki.
Thank you. Thank you, Geoff.
Cheers.